Okay, let me go to my notes here for this. Just bear with me because I'm switching between articles, notes, and some other stuff here. Okay, so I'll show you my notes here because I have 10 pages of notes, but we'll go to it here on the screen share right here. This is what I want to go to. After slavery ends. So after slavery ends, we're going to see a lot of these large labor unions created, and they were created to protect jobs for white men, to keep African Americans out of these unions. And they're going to have contracts with various industries. And let me try to blow this up some more. They're going to have contracts with various industries that you can only hire white men that belong to these unions. Then, and this is to lock African Americans out of these jobs. Then from about 1866 to 1880, we're going to see about 12 million European immigrants come to the United States. Okay. And a lot of the jobs that they got should have gone to African Americans because we were the ones doing the work. But the other thing was, is that even though they got these jobs, their labor is going to be largely exploited. So even though these European immigrants get these jobs, their labor is going to be largely exploited, and they're going to be paid very low wages. They're going to work in unsanitary conditions, etc. Okay, so I'm not against unions. I'm not against unions. I'm against racism in labor unions. Okay. Once African Americans are able to get into labor unions, fight against racism to various degrees, labor unions are going to help to create an African American middle class. But it was a hard fight. Okay. Labor unions have done a lot of good things, but when we look at the origins of a lot of these labor unions, it comes out of white supremacy and racism, and it comes out of a need to lock African Americans out of these opportunities. Okay, so read How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. This is from the Nation of Islam Research Group. And it's very well documented that they talk about how the labor union movement of the late 1880s has arguably done more to destroy Black progress than any other known action of white people outside of slavery. But this is largely left out of history. Okay. Now, so we talked about that. While historians have misrepresented Blacks in slavery as being mere field hands, African Americans held a virtual monopoly on almost all skilled and unskilled labor. Okay, we were the engineers, shipbuilders, tailors, shoemakers, carpenters, etc. Let's see here. Okay, so we covered that pretty much already. The origins of Labor Day, the Industrial Revolution, 1790s. We did that. So as manufacturing increasingly replaces an agricultural basis, as the wellspring of American employment, labor unions, which had first appeared in the late 18th century, which is the late 1700s, we're going to first see labor unions going we're going to see a lot of small labor unions. Then they're going to grow more prominent after slavery ends, and they become more vocal because because you're replacing a agricultural basis with a manufacturing basis. All right, let's see. Okay, you have an industrial revolution here in the U.S. and the 1880s, and you have labor unions began organizing labor strikes and rallies to protest poor conditions and compel employers to renegotiate hours and pay. Many of these events turned violent during the period of time, including the infamous Haymarket riot of 1886, in which several Chicago policemen and workers were killed. Other protests and strikes gave rise to long-standing traditions. On September 5th, 1882, 10,000 workers took unpaid time off from work to march from City Hall in Union Square in New York City, holding the first Labor Day parade in U.S. history. Now, the idea of a working man's holiday celebrated on the first Monday in September caught on in other industrial centers across the country. And many states passed legislation recognizing it. Congress would not legalize the holiday until 12 years later, in 1884, when a watershed moment in American labor history brought workers' rights squarely into public's view. Okay, and this was the Pullman Palace Car Company strike by the Pullman workers. Okay, now the Pullman Porters, who were African American, the Pullman Porters were not allowed to strike because they were not allowed to join the union. When we look at George Pullman, and this history on George Pullman is fascinating, and this is going to be this ties into the Panic of 1893, which we talked about in the beginning of this presentation. So George Pullman founds the Pullman Palace Car Company in Chicago in 1867. He's also going to actually found a town called Pullman, Illinois, where his workers are going to live. And he's going to found a bank in Pullman, Illinois as well. So George Pullman is going to cut wages as rents continue during the Panic of 1893. Cuts to wages and rents endure. Despite growing tensions among George Pullman's workers, George Pullman's vision of a paternalistic community organized around a factory fascinated the American public for a time. When Chicago hosted the Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair of 1893, international visitors flocked to see the model town created by George Pullman. So his workers lived in quarters that George Pullman owned. Rent was taken directly out of their paychecks. Okay. Things changed dramatically with the Panic of 1893, which was a severe financial depression that affected the American economy. George Pullman is going to cut the wages of his workers by 1/3, but he refused to lower the rent of his workers in the company housing that he owned. He cuts wages by 33%, but he did not cut their rent. So the depression set off by the Panic of 1893 was the greatest depression America had known and was only surpassed by the Great Depression of the 1930s. In early May 1893, the New York stock market dropped sharply, and in late June, panic selling caused the stock market to crash. A severe credit crisis resulted in more than 16,000 businesses failed by the end of 1893, including and it also included the failed businesses of about 156 railroad companies and nearly 500 banks. Okay. Unemployment spread until 1 in 6 American men lost their jobs. Thoughtco.com has an article, Financial Panics of the 19th Century. Okay, so check out that article. Now, the town just outside of Chicago had been built as a utopian for George Pullman's workers. And I'm going to go back to my notes for this here. Okay, how you doing, Trinace? Let's see here. Let's flip over to this. Okay, the inventor of the Pullman car right here. Okay, so George Pullman, who was the inventor of the Pullman car, which was a sleeping car on railroads that, because people are traveling across the country. They're not flying at this time. They're traveling across the country by railroad. Okay. He was born in 1831 in upstate New York. He was the son of a carpenter. He learned carpentry himself and moved to Chicago, Illinois in the late 1850s. During the Civil War, George Pullman began building a new kind of railroad passenger car, passenger car, which had berths for passengers to sleep. Pullman's cars became popular with the railroads, and in 1867, he formed the Pullman Palace Car Company, Okay. He was the creator of the railroad sleeping car, and he's going to found a town in Pullman, Illinois for his, he's going to found a town in Illinois called Pullman, Illinois. He founded this town for his employees. The town just outside of Chicago had been built as a utopian home for George Pullman's workers, but the utopia was designed to serve George Pullman above all others, according to PBS.org, Public Broadcasting System. Quote, its residents all worked for the Pullman Company, PBS notes. Quote, their paychecks drawn from Pullman Bank, because he owned a bank, and their rent set by George Pullman deducted automatically from their weekly paychecks, end quote. From 1880 to 1893, all seemed well in Pullman Town until an economic depression prompted George Pullman to cut his employees' wages, even though their rents remained the same. The workers walked out. In solidarity, members of the American Railway Union, founded by fiery socialist Eugene Debs, according to Time magazine, the American Railway Company took up the cause of the George Pullman workers who are striking, and the 150,000 members of the American Railway Union refused to work on trains carrying George Pullman's sleeping cars, prompting a nationwide transportation nightmare. Now, you may have heard the name Eugene Debs recently in the media behind the indictments of Donald Trump, because people are saying that Donald Trump can still run for president from prison. And a precedence for this would be when Eugene Debs ran for president of he ran for United States president representing the Socialist Party, and he ran for president from prison. So when you hear about Eugene Debs, the socialist, running for president from prison, this is who they're talking about. Eugene Debs was the president of the American Railway Union, who joined in 1893, his union joined along with the Pullman worker strikers in this strike against George Pullman. All right, let's go back to my notes. We're going to wrap up this here in a few minutes, hopefully. In the early 1880s, as his company prospered and his factories grew, Pullman began planning a town. Okay, so he built a town. He had a theater in the town, etc. Saloons, dance halls, and other establishments that would have been frequented by working class Americans of that time were not allowed in the city limits of Pullman, Illinois. And it was widely believed that company spies kept a watchful eye on the workers during their hours off the job. The intrusiveness of management in the private lives of workers naturally became a source of resentment. Okay, now, so we have this Panic of 1893. Read the article, Financial Panics of the 19th Century, from thoughtco.com. Orders for railroad sleeping cars declined, and George Pullman was forced to lay off hundreds of employees. Those who remained endured wage cuts, even while rents in Pullman Town, Pullman, Illinois, remained consistent. Take-home paychecks plummeted. And so the employees walked out demanding lower rents and higher pay. The American Railway Union, led by socialist Eugene V. Debs, came to the cause of the striking workers, and railroad workers across the nation boycotted trains carrying George Pullman's cars. Rioting, pillaging, and burning of railroad cars soon ensued. Mobs of non-union workers joined in. Okay, so the Pullman worker strike spreads nationwide. Outraged by the strike at his factories, George Pullman closed the plant, determined to wait out the workers. Pullman's stubborn strategy might have worked except for the American Railway Union members who joined in the strike. Now, the strike instantly became a national issue, and President Grover Cleveland, who won the presidential election, who just been elected president again, because he's the only president to win 2 non-consecutive terms. Benjamin Harrison was the president in 1893. Then Stephen Grover Cleveland wins the election, becomes president again. President Stephen Grover Cleveland, faced with nervous railroads, railroad executives, and interrupted mail trains, declared the strike a federal crime and deployed 12,000 troops to break the strike. Violence erupted, and 2 men were killed when U.S. deputy marshals fired on protesters in Kensington, Illinois, near Chicago. But the strike was doomed. On May 11th, 1894, employees of the Pullman Car Company in Chicago went on strike to protest wage cuts and the firing of union representatives. Okay. Then on June 26, 1894, the American Railway Union, led by Eugene Debs, called for the boycott of Pullman railway cars, crippling railroad traffic nationwide. To break the Pullman strike, the federal government dispatched troops to Chicago, 12,000 U.S. troops, unleashing a wave of riots that resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen workers. Okay, so there was bloodshed in the streets behind this strike, this nationwide strike. So people still ask the question of who created Labor Day. We don't know exactly who created Labor Day. We do know on June 28th, 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed Labor Day into law. In the wake of this massive unrest and in an attempt to repair ties with American workers, Congress passed an act making Labor Day a legal holiday in the District of Columbia and U.S. territories. On June 28, 1894, President Stephen Grover Cleveland signed this act into law. More than a century later, the true founder of Labor Day has yet to be identified. Many credit Peter J. McGuire, co-founder of the American Federation of Labor, while others have suggested that Matthew McGuire, M-A-G-U-I-R-E, a secretary of the Central Labor Union, with first proposing the holiday. Okay, so there's an article from theatlantic.com on this also. Read that. And there's a good article from Time Magazine called How a Bloody Railroad Strike Paved the Way for the First Labor Day. How a bloody railroad strike paved the way for the first Labor Day. Now, when we look more at African-American roots of Labor Day, we deal with George Pullman and the Pullman Car Company, and the fact that the African-American Pullman Porters, who many of them were former slaves, were not able to participate in this strike. When a Pullman car was leased to a railroad, it was equipped with highly trained porters to serve the travelers. These cars were staffed with recently freed slaves who George Pullman judged to be skilled in service and willing to work for low wages. Soon, the Pullman Rail Car Company was the largest employer of African Americans in the country, with the greatest concentration of Pullman porters living on Chicago's South Side. So Labor Day was nationally established after the Pullman Strike of 1894, when President Stephen Grover Cleveland sought to win political points by honoring dissatisfied railroad workers. This strike did not include African-American Pullman porters or conductors on trains, but for the black porters, racism fueled part of the workers' dissatisfaction and was never addressed. Okay, so it's going to be after the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters is founded by A. Phillip Randolph in 1925. It's going to be after that that these workers are going to be able to go on strike. Okay, so A. Phillip Randolph and president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, also called Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids, M-A-I-D-S, was the first African-American labor union to be affiliated with the American Federation of Labor. It was founded in 1925 by labor organizer and civil rights activist A. Phillip Randolph, who's also a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, my fraternity. You heard me mention that on Roland Martin Unfiltered when we talked about the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. And I didn't agree with A. Phillip Randolph on everything. I disagreed with him on the Marcus Garvey Must Go campaign, but other things I agreed with him on. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters aimed to improve the working conditions and treatment of African-American railroad porters and maids employed by the Pullman Company, by George Pullman, a manufacturer and operator of railroad cars. The BSCP, Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, embodied A. Phillip Randolph's belief that segregation and racism were linked to the unfair distribution of wealth, and power that condemned tens of millions of African American and white Americans to chronic misery. Britannica.com, Encyclopedia Britannica, has a good write-up on the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. You can check that out at Britannica.com. Now, in their home neighborhoods, to be a Pullman porter was considered a prestigious position. The job offered a steady income, an opportunity to travel across America, and a life largely free of heavy physical labor, which was rare for African Americans in that era. Historian Tamil Black recounts they were good looking, clean, and immaculate in their dress. Their style was quite manly. Their language was very carefully crafted so that they had a sense of intelligence about them. They were good role models for young men. And I remember there was a documentary in the last few years about the Pullman Porters also, these African-American men. But the porters were also mistreated, underpaid, and subjected to countless indignities on the job. A Pullman porter was really kind of a glorified hotel maid and bellhop in what George Pullman called a hotel on wheels. And what George Pullman called a hotel on wheels explains former Pullman porter and historian Greg Leroy. Read the article from blackpast.org called Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, that breaks down this history. And blackpast.org, they have about 6,000 pages of articles dealing with African history and African American history. So that's one of the sources I use in my classes. If you go back to my notes here quickly, this is on page 7 of my notes. Let's see, where are we here? The Pullman Company, I want to go to this citation here. Where are we? Right here. Okay. So the Pullman Company just thought of the porters as a piece of equipment, just like another button on a panel. The same as a light switch or a fan switch. The same as a light switch or a fan switch. And let's see here. I'm going to pull up this article. Blackpast.org. Okay, this piece right here. Let's go to this. Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, 1925 to 1978. This is from blackpast.org. All right. This is a mass meeting of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters in 1933. Let's see. I want. Where is that? Okay, I'm not sure what that is. Okay, check out this article here. I'm just going to go back to my notes. I'm trying to show you the actual article, but Brotherhood of Porters, is that the same thing? Okay, I'll just go back to my notes on this. Okay, so the Pullman Company just thought of the Pullman Porters as a piece of equipment, just like another button on a panel, the same as a light switch or a fan switch, end quote. George Pullman demanded 400 hours a month or 11,000 miles. Okay, 400 hours a month or 11,000 miles from his Pullman Porters, sometimes as much as 20 hours at a stretch, and he paid them ridiculously low wages. So in 1926, an average, they were paid an average of $810 a year in 1926. That's about $7,500 in today's dollars. Quote, it did not pay a livable wage, but they made a living with tips that they got, because the salary was nothing, says Lynn Hughes of the A. Phillip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum, the A. Phillip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum. The company expected its employees to pay for their own meals, supply their own uniforms, and supply their own shoe polish, and allow them only short naps on couches in the smoking car. Disgruntled Pullman porters began to question the situation and decided to take on the enormously powerful company. In 1925, the Pullman Porters formed a union called the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. This marked the beginning of a 12-year struggle for dignity, better working conditions, and fair pay. Its leaders were charismatic Black activist A. Phillip Randolph and former Pullman Porter Milton Webster, head of the Chicago Union Local. Their eventual triumph marked the first time in American history that a Black union forced a powerful corporation to the negotiation table. It was a significant step forward for Black equality. It was a significant step forward for Black equality. And let me see here. I'm looking at this article here. Just bear with me because I have a ton of information here. Okay, that's from a different article. I think this had to be the article from Public Broadcasting System, from pbs.org. That's what that is. That was Tamil Black. So that was Brotherhood Sleeping Car Porters. Regular. Okay. Here's one of these articles. But we've got the I've got the notes here, so that's fine. We'll just roll with that. Okay, let's continue. Their eventual triumph marked the first time in American history that a black union forced a powerful corporation to the negotiation table. It was a significant step forward for black equality. The union members learned how to organize. They discovered that even in a time of great prejudice in America, blacks could effect change if they stood together. Okay, so this was like something like really, really important that I gathered from this in researching this history. Back when I originally did this presentation, like in 2019, I was researching all this history. This is an example of African Americans working together for an extended period of time. This is before the modern day civil rights movement. The modern day civil rights movement partly has its roots in the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, the organization, and their 12-year strike that they had. Okay, that 12-year fight that they had. They would later apply these techniques to the civil rights movement. They would later apply these techniques to the civil rights movement. We know that A. Phillip Randolph is going to become instrumental in the modern day civil rights movement. And he was looked at as one of the big six Negro leaders. So Negro leaders also. So the union members of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porter learned how to organize and negotiate. And I'm going to try to pull something else up as well. Okay. All right. Okay, so they learn how to negotiate, learn how to organize and negotiate as well. And let me pull this up here. Okay, we'll go back to that. Just give me a minute. All right. Okay, so we know that A. Phillip Randolph becomes one of what's known as the Big Six Negro leaders, Big Six African American leaders during the modern day civil rights movement. He's one of the architects of the March on Washington. And these African American men discovered that even in a time of great prejudice in America, African Americans could affect change, could bring about change if they stood together and persevered. Once again, it's important to understand that these African Americans organized, and they formed this organization, and they realized even at a time of racial prejudice and racism in America in the late 1920s and 30s, they realized that they could bring about change if they stood together and persevered. Now, these tactics were later applied to the civil rights movement, the modern day civil rights movement. So even though we look at the modern day civil rights movement starting in December of 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott, which started Monday morning, December 5th, 1955, or some people take it back to the lynching of Emmett Till, August 28th, 1955, and what takes afterwards, the effort to force a trial to gather information on the killers of Emmett Till, and the support given to Emmett Till's family and the international attention on this lynching of this 14-year-old boy. His cousin, and we know his cousin Simeon Wright passed away in September 2017. Okay. But we see the seeds of the modern day civil rights movement in the fight of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. TheRoot.com had a good article and a video clip from September 4th, 2017 called America's Racist History of Labor. America's Racist History of Labor. So you can check that out also, America's Racist History of Labor. Now, you also have Isaac Myers. Isaac Myers is the, let's see here, let's go back over to the PowerPoint presentation. Isaac Myers was the president of the Colored National Labor Union in 1869. Colored National Labor Union. So Isaac Myers was a mason, brick mason, labor leader, born in Baltimore, January 13th, 1835. He was the son of free African-American parents, but grew up in a slave state of Maryland. Isaac Myers received his early education from a private day school of a local clergyman named Reverend John Forty. Since the state of Maryland provided no public education for African-American children at the time, at age 16, Isaac Myers became an apprentice to James Jackson, who was a prominent African-American Baltimore ship caulker. 4 years later, Isaac Myers was supervising the caulking of clipper ships operating out of Baltimore. The newly created union, now, during the Civil War, Isaac Myers worked as a porter and shipping clerk for a grocer, and then returned to his original profession as a caulker. Soon after the war ended, the Civil War ends in 1865, Isaac Myers found himself unexpectedly unemployed when a group of white caulkers protested the employment of black caulkers and longshoremen. In response to the strike, Isaac Myers proposed the creation of a union of black caulkers, Caulkers. The newly created union, called the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society, the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society, decided to form a cooperative company that would own a shipyard and railroad. Okay, and we have a deep, rich history of cooperatives, cooperative economics. Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard's book, Collective Courage, breaks down this history. This is one of the books that we use in my online history classes also. This book here, Collective Courage, A History of African-American Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice. Collective Courage, A History of Cooperative Economic Thought and Practice by Jessica Gordon Nimhard. And the concept of the cooperatives, these were principles that we brought with us from Africa. All right, now, so he forms the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society, and they decided to form a cooperative company that would own a shipyard and railroad, pooling their resources. The workers issued stock and quickly raised $10,000 in subscriptions among Black Baltimore residents. They also borrowed another $30,000, and on February 12, 1866, they purchased a shipyard and railway, which they named the Chesapeake Marine Railway, which was a dry dock company. Okay, so they did this in 1866. All right, blackpast.org has a good article on Isaac Myers, and I'm going to go to that here. Let me pull this up. Isaac Myers. So when we study, you know, how we were using the cooperative system, and I've done presentations on this in the past, and we deal with this is how we engaged in economics. A lot of these economic empowerment gurus out here that are preaching white capitalism and Black people investing green dollars in the white-owned stock market and trying to pass that off as economic empowerment, because it's not. You can create wealth, but economic empowerment and wealth creation are not the same thing. You got a lot of these economic empowerment gurus out here using the term economic empowerment and wealth creation interchangeably. They're not the same thing. Economic empowerment occurs when we control the economics in our community. We own the land. We own the majority of the businesses. We own the gas stations, radio stations, grocery stores, dry cleaners, multi-story buildings, etc., on the newspapers, the media in our community. That's economic empowerment. We could all have stock portfolios. I want to make sure everybody understands this. We could all have stock portfolios valued at $5 million. And we could still spend 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us. If you have wealth creation, you don't have economic empowerment. And there are a lot of economic empowerment gurus, or whatever they want to call themselves, out here using the terms interchangeably. They're not the same thing. I'm not against wealth creation, but we have to be clear on what we're doing. Black people investing green dollars in white-owned corporations is not economic empowerment. You can create wealth. Now, you can take that wealth and you can use that to buy up the land, buy up houses, own grocery stores, own radio stations, TV stations. You can use that wealth to buy assets in our community so we can control the economics and control the politicians in our communities. But we cannot confuse wealth creation with economic empowerment. Those are two entirely different things. They come from two different mindsets. When you understand history and you understand what Isaac Myers was doing and others, they're talking about economic empowerment and controlling the economics in their own communities and being able to employ their own people. That's a different mindset than just creating wealth. So they also borrowed another $30,000, and on February 12th, 1866, 1 year after slavery ended, they purchased a shipyard and railway, which they named the Chesapeake Marine Railway and Dry Dock Company. Within months, the cooperative employed 300 Black caulkers and received several government contracts. This is in 1866, not 1966, 1866, the year after the Civil War ended and chattel slavery ended. Ultimately, it employed a number of white workers as well. The success of Isaac Myers' union in Baltimore encouraged Black caulkers in other seaport cities to organize. It also caught the attention of the National Labor Union Executive Committee. The National Labor Union, which was founded in 1866, largely to lock African Americans out of the jobs that we have been doing for free. In 1869, the National Labor Union invited Isaac Myers' Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society to its annual convention meeting in Philadelphia. The National Labor Union declared it would welcome African American unions to its federation. Meanwhile, Isaac Myers was elected president of the Colored National Labor Union, the Colored National Labor Union, the first organization of its type in U.S. history. Isaac Myers appealed to black workers to join unions and called on white unions to accept them as full members. Expecting the full support of the National Labor Union, he soon learned that the predominantly white organization insisted that black union members abandon the Republican Party and join the Labor Reform Party. So at this time, the Republican Party was largely the party of African Americans because they were the party of Lincoln. Okay, this is before Reconstruction. This is before the Republicans betrayed African Americans with the Compromise of 1877 that most of these black conservatives out here don't want to talk about. Okay, and they agreed to that Rutherford B. Hayes, who was the Republican candidate for president in the 1876 presidential election, they agreed that he would remove the remaining Union troops out of the South to allow the Democrats and the white supremacists to take back full control of the state governments in the South. Okay, this is the Compromise of 1877. All right, now, when black union members led by Isaac Myers refused to abandon the Republican Party, they were not invited back to the National Labor Union. With no allies among the large labor movement, the Colored National Labor Union soon found itself isolated. It collapsed by 1871. Isaac Myers held a variety of other positions, but his years of prominence were over. He worked as a detective for the Baltimore Post Office between 1872 and 1879. Between 1879 and 1882, he operated the small Baltimore coal yard, C-O-A-L. All right, read the rest of this about Isaac Myers at blackpast.org and the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society, the Colored Caulkers Trade Union Society. Now, Frederick Douglass was vice president of a colored labor union. Where is that? Right here. The Colored National Labor Union, 1872. He's going to become president. He was vice president of a colored labor union and becomes president of one. Also becomes president of one as well. So blackpast.org has some information on that, and I had where's that article? I had some information on that dealing with Frederick Douglass also. There is a good article from newsone.com that deals with, where is that? Oh, it's five black-led labor unions that paved the way for black workers' rights. Yeah, 5 black-led labor unions that paved the way for black workers' rights. So check this out from newsone.com. This is a good article. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through this. This is from September 5th, 2022. 5 black labor unions that paved the way for black workers' rights. And I want to close out this ad. They talk about the, let's see here. Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. They talk about the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The Colored National Labor Union. The Colored National Labor Union. Waiting for this to keep loading. Okay. Colored National Labor Union. They talk about the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, the National Domestic Workers Union, and the American League of Colored Laborers. The American League of Colored Laborers. Okay, led by Frederick Douglass, created in 1850. The American League of Colored Laborers. Okay, so you can check that out as well. 5 black-led labor unions that have paved the way for black workers' rights. Okay, so I think that's everything. I know I had a lot of information. It's a deep history, and a lot of this history does not get covered in especially mainstream media when they talk about Labor Day, and even if they mention African Americans, a lot of this stuff does not get covered. So since I have my own platform and I'm a historian, I want to make sure we covered it here today. So hopefully you learned a lot. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network as well. Register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. You have the information at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Be sure to register for my new online history course. Visit our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. This class is on Saturdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to start Saturday, August 6th. 2025. Go to our website, africanhistorynetwork.com, and scroll down. This is African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. This is a 10-week online course. We're actually going to start on Saturday, September 6th. Click right here to register. Classes on sale, $80. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And one of the things we'll talk about are various African empires, whether we talk about ancient Nubia or the Kush Empire, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, Great Zimbabwe, Carthage, the Nok culture. We're going Meroe, Axum. We're going through and looking at history, thousands of years of history, various African empires, and then also we'll deal with the transatlantic slave trade and how it evolved. So we'll look at history from 5000 BC through 1800 AD. You'll get 5 of my lectures in digital download format free with this. And then also be sure to download our class lesson plan here as well. Click on the download button to download our class lesson plan. And visit my website, africanhistorynetwork.com. Our social media handles are here as well. And you can email me through the website. Just click on contact the African History Network. So this class is PG-13. You can use this content with your children. Also, I don't do a lot of cursing or anything like that. It's very visual. There are 80 to 100 articles that we reference in the class. I show you the articles on the screen. The 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of the books. We show you the books we show you the pages of the books on the screen as well. And there are 200 slides in the class also. Okay. So I have a PowerPoint presentation, the video clips that we show, excerpts of interviews I've done with some of our historians. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017. So it has evolved immensely since then. Also, you can support the African History Network through PayPal and Cash App. We have the information right on the homepage of my website. If you scroll down, $ the AHN show through Cash App and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This is our Cash App. Tag $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. Okay, these are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts that have been stealing money from us. And I put our tag right here. Here's our link to our Cash App, QR code. Okay, so you can support us there if you want to donate support us $5, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is. It definitely helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay some of the bills, and broadcast the Sunday night show also. And here's our link for PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay. All right. So look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever.